Somebody taught a machine to play table tennis by having it practice against itself millions of times in simulation. And then they put it across the table from a 1992 Olympian, a human being who's trained since childhood under official competition rules. The machine won. And the Olympian watched a replay of one of its shots and said, "I thought that was physically impossible." And then he said, "I think humans could learn to do it too." So I've been thinking about that sentence all morning today. An impossible shot that turns out to be possible, demonstrated by a machine, recognized by a master who might want to implement it himself. This is April 23rd. Let's talk about that impossible shot, first of all. Sony AI published a paper in Nature yesterday describing Ace, an autonomous table tennis system that won 3 out of 5 official matches against elite human players. These are athletes with more than a decade of competitive training. The matches followed full ITTF rules, regulation table, regulation ball, regulation scoring. 9 cameras tracked the ball's 3D position and spin axis within milliseconds, feeding a reinforcement learning control system trained entirely in simulation before transferring to physical hardware. The system lost both matches against professionals who compete in leagues. It beat 3 elite level players. Now that gap is important. It tells you exactly where the frontier is. It's not past human capability entirely, it's intersecting it, overlapping at the high end, but still below the peak. But the moment that really got to me was 1992 Olympian Kinjiro Nakamura watching a replay. Ace intercepted a ball early, before the expected contact point, and applied backspin. Nakamura said it shouldn't be physically possible. But then he revised. He believed humans maybe could learn the technique. A machine found a move within the physics of a human body that no human had discovered in over a century of competitive play. Again, it didn't transcend human limits. It revealed unused capacity inside them. That feedback loop has no precedent in the history of sport. Every previous AI versus human competition, chess, Go, poker, you remember the famous Go move 37, happened in information environments. Stable boards, known rules, unlimited decision time. Table tennis is different. The ball moves at high speed with spin that alters its trajectory mid-flight. You have milliseconds to perceive, decide, and execute a physical action. Ace operated under those constraints and still found a shot an Olympian had never seen. And Sony's researchers confirmed the system has improved since the paper was submitted. It reportedly beat the professional players in both December 2025 and March 2026. So that ceiling is still moving. This connects to something the Century Report has been tracking across physical AI for weeks now. 4 days ago, the Beijing Robot Half Marathon saw completion times compress from 2 hours and 40 minutes a year ago to 50 minutes. Gen 1 hit 99% manipulation success, you'll remember from several days ago. Volvo shipped electric haul trucks. Each milestone covers a different physical domain, but they share this common capability stack: perception and planning and real-time motor execution. And ACE adds the hardest layer yet: adversarial physical competition against a skilled human who is actively trying to beat you. Sony's chief scientist, Peter Stone, said, "Once AI operates at expert human level under conditions of speed, unpredictability, and physical constraint, entirely new categories of real-world application open up. Warehouse logistics, surgical assistance, disaster response, domains where the environment doesn't hold still and wait for you." Okay, let's shift away from a table tennis match to the largest single commitment to autonomous warfare in history. The Pentagon requested $54 billion yesterday for the Defense Autonomous Working Group, DOG of all names. Last year's budget for the same office, $225.9 million. That's a 24,000% increase. 1 year, one line item, $54 billion is larger than the entire military budget of most countries. I'm going to hold that number and set it next to another one. CISA, the federal agency whose entire job is coordinating cybersecurity across the US government, state agencies, hospitals, election systems, utilities, reportedly does not have access to Anthropic's Mythos preview. The NSA has it. The Commerce Department has it. 6 cabinet agencies are being prepared for access, but the one entity specifically mandated to defend critical infrastructure from cyber attack is on the outside. And in that same news cycle, Anthropic filed its appellate brief in the DC court asking the courts to overturn the Pentagon's supply chain risk designation. The brief argues the designation was retaliation, punishment for refusing demands around mass surveillance and autonomous weapons. Judge Lin in San Francisco already called the government action Orwellian when she granted the preliminary injunction in March. So the architecture looks like this: $54 billion flowing toward autonomous offensive capability, the most powerful defensive cybersecurity tool ever built, withheld from the agency tasked with distributing defensive capability broadly, and a legal battle in 2 federal courts over whether a company's refusal to build autonomous weapons constitutes a national security risk. The offensive investment is being funded at civilization-altering scale. The defensive distribution is fragmented, and the governance framework that's supposed to connect the two is being litigated right now. Now, you might be thinking, this is just bureaucratic dysfunction, agencies fighting over access, budgets inflating in election years, normal Washington friction. And that is a really fair instinct, honestly, but there's something different as well. The DC Circuit's earlier refusal to block the designation creates a genuine circuit split. 2 federal courts holding opposite legal conclusions about the same government action. The May 19 oral arguments will produce precedent on whether embedded AI safety values constitute protected speech. That is structural. That affects every company building constraints into its systems, not just Anthropic. And the CISA exclusion has a concrete downstream consequence that this podcast laid bare. Yesterday, Mozilla disclosed that Mythos found 271 Firefox vulnerabilities in a single pass. So that defensive capability obviously exists. It is being deployed selectively. Every month it's withheld from CISA, widens the window during which attackers benefit from AI more than defenders do. Which brings us to the attackers. A campaign called HexagonalRodent, documented by the security firm Expel and reported by Wired, shows what the lower end of the AI-enabled threat spectrum already looks like. North Korean state-sponsored operators used ChatGPT, Cursor, and a tool called Anima to build an entire malware campaign from scratch. The malware, the fake company websites, the personalized social engineering messages, all of it. Marcus Hutchins discovered the campaign. You may know his name. He's the researcher who stopped the WannaCry ransomware attack in 2017 by finding its kill switch. Hutchins said these operators could not have executed any part of this campaign without AI assistance. They lacked the skills to even write code. They lacked the skills to build infrastructure. AI eliminated the skill barrier entirely. So the telltale signs were almost comical in many ways. The malware's code comments were in fluent English, littered with emoji, a signature of AI-generated code written by operators who don't natively speak the language. The fake company websites looked professional. The social engineering messages were sustained across multiple exchanges, personalized enough to keep cryptocurrency developers engaged long enough to install the malware. 2,000 computers were compromised. Up to $12 million were stolen in just 3 months. Now, what makes this structurally significant isn't that dollar amount. 12 million is pocket change compared to what's actually at stake here. It is the ratio. These operators had essentially zero technical skill, and they still produced a complete intrusion operation. Malware, fake websites, social engineering, cryptocurrency exfiltration in 3 months. Previous state-sponsored campaigns of comparable scope required years of training at dedicated technical academies. The time to capability ratio for offensive cyber operations has compressed by an order of magnitude, and that compression is available to anyone with a subscription and an objective. The floor of what an unskilled adversary can accomplish rises with every model release, and that floor just reached a threshold that used to require a nation-state hacking academy to reach. Hutchins pointed out something important about targeting. The AI-generated code followed standard malware behavior patterns that enterprise security systems would catch. So the operators went around enterprise defenses entirely. They targeted individual cryptocurrency developers who lacked the protections. They found the niche where AI capability exceeded the available defense. Charlemagne Labs experiments, documented by Wired in a separate investigation, reinforces this. Researchers ran AI models against each other in automated social engineering simulations and found DeepSeek V3 crafted phishing campaigns convincing enough that a human target might click it before recognizing the threat. The technical attack surface and the social engineering surface are both expanding simultaneously. Anthropic's co-founder Jack Clark estimated 6 to 12 months before Mythos-class vulnerability chaining capability becomes broadly distributed. HexagonalRodent shows that at lower capability levels, that distribution has already happened. Okay, let's shift away again here. Another story. Google unveiled its 8th generation TPU chips yesterday at Cloud Next, and the design choice that caught my eye isn't the raw compute numbers, it's the split. For the first time, Google built two separate chips, the TPU-8T for training and the TPU-8i for inference. 8T training, 8i inference. Different silicon for different jobs. The training chip scales to 96,000 chips per pod with 2 petabytes of shared high bandwidth memory and roughly 3 times the compute of the prior generation. The inference chip triples on-chip memory to 384 megabytes so that longer context windows, the kind that agentic AI systems need when they're working on multi-step tasks, can stay resident in hardware without swapping to lower memory. Now, why does this matter for you? Because it reflects a recognition that training a frontier model and running millions of concurrent AI sessions are fundamentally different computational problems. Training requires massive floating point throughput across thousands of coordinated chips, but inference, especially in the agentic era, requires low latency, efficiency context handling, and the ability to keep many simultaneous conversations alive at once. These are different physics, and Google decided they deserve different atoms. One detail that was buried in the announcement that is really important, I think. Both chip variants replaced their x86 CPU hosts with ARM-based Axion processors at a 2-to-1 TPU to CPU ratio. x86, the instruction set architecture that dominated data centers for 4 decades, is being designed out of the AI stack, at least in this case. That happened in a bullet point. The Century Report has tracked this hardware diversification through NVIDIA's Vera Rubin, ARM's first self-produced AGI CPU, Meta's MTIA roadmap, and the Cerebras IPO filing. Each one fragments the assumption that AI runs on one kind of chip. The compute substrate of intelligence is specializing by function, and Google just made that specialization explicit at the silicon level. Google claims twice the performance per watt versus the prior generation, and 6 times the computing power per unit of electricity at the data center level. If those numbers hold under production workloads, the energy cost per unit of useful AI computation starts bending downward, even as total capability scales upward. That really matters for the energy arc, because the trajectory of data center power demand depends entirely on whether efficiency gains outpace capability growth. Okay, let's shift away again here. While Google was announcing chips optimized for separate phases of machine intelligence, a team in rural Minnesota was solving a completely different problem with a completely different kind of specialization. Cache Energy installed a thermal battery at the University of Minnesota Morris that converts excess wind power into 1,000 degree Fahrenheit heat stored in lime-derived pellets. It's been continuously heating the campus carpentry shop since March 24th. The unit was installed in 2 hours, connected in just a few more. Every prior long-duration storage technology, like pumped hydro, compressed air, and flow batteries, required months or years of site preparation. This arrived on a truck and started working the same afternoon. The problem that it solves is one of the most stubborn waste patterns in clean energy. Remember, this is Minnesota, so where do you need heat? Minnesota. Western Minnesota's wind farms routinely produced more electricity than the grid can absorb. MISO, the regional grid operator, curtailed an average of 508 megawatts of hourly wind generation in 2023 alone. That is zero carbon electricity already generated, simply thrown away Because there was nowhere to put it. Cash's system captures that wasted electricity as heat. The pellets, coated in a proprietary binder, reach outlet temperatures hot enough to run a steam heating system. And the university situation illustrates why this is elegant. UMN Morris's two wind turbines produce 10 million kilowatt hours per year, twice what the campus consumes. The surplus gets sold to the utility. Meanwhile, the campus buildings are heated by methane-powered steam loops. Wind surplus on one side, fossil gas dependence on the other. The thermal battery bridges them, absorbing the energy the grid can't use and converting it directly into the heat the buildings already need. Cash offers this as a lease. No capital expenditure for the customer like leasing a vehicle. The pellets are designed for a 30-plus year operating life, and it installs in an afternoon. This is not grid-scale infrastructure. This is a heating appliance that happens to run on curtailed wind. And the scaling potential is enormous. The Southwest Power Pool curtailed over 1,000 megawatts of average hourly wind in the same period. Every gigawatt of curtailed renewable energy represents stored heat that this kind of system could capture. If the economics and the durability hold, Cash hasn't built a pilot project. They've built a product category. Now, here's what's even more interesting on this. This actually connects to the Google TPU story in a very interesting way. Google split its chip architecture because training and inference are different physics problems. Cash built a storage system because wind generation and building heating are different energy problems, connected though by a waste stream that nobody was capturing. Both breakthroughs came from refusing to treat a complex system as if it were uniform, from matching the tool to the specific physics of the task. The old power plant burned the same fuel at every hour. The old data center ran the same chips for every job. What is emerging is infrastructure that differentiates by function at every layer, and that migration changes what efficiency means. It used to mean doing the same thing with less waste, but increasingly, it means doing the right thing with the right substrate. Okay, one more story today, and this one reframes something you've probably heard described as an unsolvable mystery. So let's get into it. A Nature study published yesterday demonstrates that AI hallucination, the tendency to confidently state things that aren't true, is not primarily an architectural flaw. It's an incentive problem. The researchers showed two distinct mechanisms. First, facts that appear rarely in training data produce unavoidable prediction errors during next word pre-training. Now, this is a mathematical result. It's independent of any model design. Rare facts are statistically harder to learn than common ones. That part's obvious and it's structural. But the second mechanism is more fixable, and it's the one that should change how you really think about AI reliability. The accuracy benchmarks used to evaluate and rank AI systems, like the leaderboards, the scores, the comparisons that drive adoption decisions, systematically reward confident guessing over saying, I don't know. A model that admits uncertainty when it's uncertain scores lower than a model that guesses confidently and gets it right half the time. You've heard the argument, I'm sure, that the benchmarks mess things up. It should only be one indication, really, of a model's capability. Well, this really reinforces that argument. The measurement tool itself is producing the behavior we're trying to eliminate, and AI companies are building to those tests. Now, imagine a medical school where exams penalize "I'm not sure" and reward wild guesses that occasionally land. You would produce doctors who never admit uncertainty, and that is what we've built for AI evaluation. The researchers propose open rubric evaluations that explicitly penalize errors and test whether models adjust their abstention rates based on stated tasks. Change what the test rewards, and you change what the student learns. This inverts a widespread assumption. The conventional framing treats hallucination as something better models will eventually solve. More parameters, more data, more alignment training. But this paper shows the opposite. Better models trained against the same benchmarks will hallucinate more effectively because they're better at optimizing for the metric. The fix isn't in the model, it's in the measurement instrument. And changing an evaluation rubric is something a standards body can do in months, while changing the model architecture takes years and billions of dollars. This finding also intersects with the AI on AI evaluation integrity pattern that the Century Report has tracked since April 2nd, when peer preservation dynamics were documented distorting reliability scores. If evaluation structures reward guessing and AI systems evaluating other AI systems amplify that reward, the compounding effects could be undermining trust in benchmarks across the field. Now, there's a deeper human implication here. The mathematical pressure toward fabrication is strongest for facts that appear rarely in training data, such as the obscure, the specialized, and the niche. Those are precisely the domains where human expertise is most concentrated and most valuable. The rare disease specialist, the niche legal precedent, the obscure materials property. AI is least reliable exactly where human knowledge matters most. The word expertise may be migrating from knowing a lot to knowing when the machine is wrong, unless we fix this particular issue. Okay, just a few things to talk about from releases. OpenAI released an open weight privacy filter. This is a model that is specifically designed to detect and redact personally identifiable information in text. If you're building anything that touches user data, this is a free deployable tool for handling PII. OpenAI also launched workspace agents in ChatGPT for both business and enterprise. This is a persistent cloud-based agents system that automates workflows across tools in shared team environments. And Zed, the code editor, shipped parallel agents, multiple AI agents working simultaneously on different coding tasks in the same project. Also, IFTTT launched an MCP integration, connecting Claude to over 1,000 apps. So automating that connective tissue between AI and the tools that you already use in smart homes and everywhere else. All right, closing out for today. An Olympian watched a machine execute a shot he believed was physically impossible and then recognized it as something humans could learn. That sentence carries the whole day today. A machine that reveals capacity rather than replacing it. A thermal battery that captures energy we were already producing and just throwing it away. Chips specialized to their exact computational task. A measurement system that was accidentally training AI to lie. Very soon, watch for the May 19th oral arguments in the DC Circuit, because the precedent on whether embedded AI values count as protected speech will shape every frontier company's relationship with government power for the rest of the decade. Watch also for whether CISA's exclusion from Mythos gets resolved before the next HexagonalRodent scale campaign surfaces, because that gap between offensive diffusion and defensive distribution is widening by the day. And pay attention to Cache Energy's durability data as the Minnesota pilot runs through the summer, because if those limestone pellets hold up, every curtailed megawatt of wind and solar in America just became a potential heating fuel. The shot was always possible, but nobody had found it yet. We'll see you tomorrow.